Welcome to part 2 of my interview with Brian Miller. Pay attention. You just don't know who you're going to meet. And be kind and be open.
And be kind and be open. And that's the end of the sentence. Too many people, they see this stuff and they go, great, if I do this, then I'll get mine, right? Then I'll get my stuff. And I've been very, very lucky to have Seth Godin, the marketing legend, go from being a hero to a mentor to something of a friend. I think he'd be comfortable with me calling him a friend these days. So Seth says that all the time, that his mentor, Zig Ziglar, the famous motivational speaker, used to say, you can get what you want as long as you get other people what they want. And Seth is like, it was one of the things Zig said that I never really loved, because the right way to phrase that is help other people get what they want, period. Right? And that's how I think about this. It's like, yeah, if you do these things, if you show up with kindness and empathy and generosity and respect on a daily basis, if you treat everyone you interact with, you look them in the eye and say, I hear you, I see you, and I'm here for you, even if we don't always agree. If that's your attitude every day, are you likely to get more things that you want? Yeah, of course you are. But that's not the reason to do it. If that's why you're doing it, it's not going to work. It's not sustainable. You will fall off because you've gone into the habit for the wrong reasons. It's got to be as an end in and of itself. That's the way to do this.
Tell us a little bit about your EARS formula.
Yeah, so EARS is an acronym, EARS. It's probably my proudest moment in my career. I had to come up with an acronym for my system of active listening, and I came up with EARS. Yay for me. That's what all of us in coaching and consulting want is, oh, I have an acronym that actually makes sense that people will remember, as opposed to the, just a random series of letters formula.
Alphabet soup.
Alphabet soup formula. Yeah, right. So this is an example of, and I really want to underscore this, the reason I've made a career, and more importantly, I've made a mission out of preaching human connection, is not because I am an expert or a master. It's because I am so very bad at it naturally. This is not my natural mode. I am an extrovert. I am a look at me. I am a let's make everybody laugh. And there's good reasons to be that guy. I love playing the game of how quickly can I make a stranger laugh before I have to move on with my day. It's great. But the problem with that, as we talked about earlier, is you're too focused on your end of the conversation, on what you're doing, and you're not as focused as you should be on what they're doing, what they're thinking, what you can give to them. And you can't give somebody a great gift unless you understand them, right? If you've ever received a gift from somebody that you thought to yourself, have you ever gotten a gift from somebody and felt bad because you hated the gift? You wish you didn't have it. You don't know what to do with it, but you feel bad because they were being generous and they bought it for you?
My husband would say I'm lying if I didn't say yes.
So here's the thing with that. The reason that you feel guilty when that happens is because people spent money or time picking out this gift. But I think you're right to be annoyed when that happens. I think when somebody gives you a gift that you don't like at all, that you're like, what would I do with this? I don't have room for this in my house. Where am I going to put this? That person who's gifting was thinking about what they wanted to give you, not what you would want to receive. And I think we are right to be angry about that. Not rude about it. Say thank you, then throw it out, right? But I think we're right. I think
regift.
Or regift it, whatever, right? But I think we're right to be angry about that. And that is how I think about when you're in extrovert mode, where you're just trying to be amazing and make people laugh and be the light of the party. There's a good time and place for that. But if you're only doing it because it makes you feel good to be the person in the center of attention, it's not going to be very useful. So I needed to create a system for myself to remind myself to keep the focus on them in a conversation. And I created this system, EARS, and I'll burn through them. This is like a 3-hour workshop I do for corporations. So we'll do it in the next 90 seconds. Here we go. E stands for eye contact. A lot of people think E is going to stand for engagement, empathy, things like that. I find that starting with eye contact is actually the easiest way to get people into the right mode, because it's a thing, it's active listening. It's a thing that you can do actively, which is, as the listener, you want to make eye contact with the speaker. Now, this is mostly a Western culture thing. Eastern cultures, some Eastern cultures have this flipped. You got to be careful about that. But in anywhere for sure in North America and Western culture, The listener makes eye contact with the speaker. And you can imagine why, right? The person who's talking, they're usually thinking about what they're going to say. They're trying to remember the point they're going to make. What was the punchline of that joke? Who was that person's name? Where was that? Where did I go? And occasionally they check back in. We just glance just for a brief second at the person we're speaking with. And as the speaker, if when I do that, in that brief split second, if your eyes are locked on me, I feel that I get this confidence boost that what I'm saying is interesting to you, it's engaging to you, you're with me, you get it. That confidence boost makes me feel more comfortable. It makes me feel seen. It makes me feel heard. It makes me want to open up and be more vulnerable. And so as the listener, we need to make eye contact as best as we can with the speaker. And, Voltaire said it the best. He said, I see you, see me. There's something that's so supremely powerful. There, I used my philosophy degree. So supremely powerful about just the eyes, right? Windows to the soul and all of that. So first, eye contact. That's E. A stands for avoid distraction. Now, again, I could have called this attention. That's the positive version. I went with the negative version, avoid distraction, because the distraction itself is the increasingly problematic thing that we're all going through. We are distracted almost 100% of the time. It's just bananas. We are distracted all the time. And I'm not just talking about phones. Like, yeah, put your phone down, or rather, put it away. Simon Sinek talks about even when it's on the table, even if it's facing down, it's so distracting to other people because it feels like you're saying this thing is more important than the conversation we're having. I need to have it in view at all times. So obviously put your phone away, but I forget the phones for a second. I don't actually think, honestly, I'm one of these people that doesn't think smartphones are like the big problem. I spend very little time talking about them. I think they're just another instantiation of a problem we've had for a long time. What's more important is that your attitude, your presence stays undistracted, which could be reading the restaurant menu. It could be checking out that person across the room. More often than not, our distraction comes from in our own head while someone else is talking to us, thinking about something else we have to do, something on our to-do list, a big work project coming up, a fight we're planning to have with mom next week, right? Why do we plan fights in our head? They never go the way we plan. We're always so eloquent in our head, aren't we? So, but we're doing that. We're in our head, or we're thinking about how we're going to respond to what they're currently saying, which is still distracting because if you're formulating a response, it's very hard to actually listen to what's currently happening, which is what makes hosting a podcast or an interview, by the way, what you're doing right now, very tricky. Because I know, because I hosted over 100 episodes in my podcast, and trying to be present and also not get caught in silence when it's your turn to ask another question, very, very hard. And you're so excellent at it, right?
Thank you.
So, and it is hard. So E, eye contact. A, avoid distraction. We must avoid distraction for the health of our relationships. We really do. And I'm not going to get into it right now, but if you just want to know how bad distraction is, just go look up the research on distracted driving. And it's brutal. It will destroy you if you look up the stats. We know how bad it is. We know that we cannot multitask. Multitasking is a myth. It's a myth. It's a myth. It's a myth. There's a million studies on this, a million different ways, but the one that'll get your heartstrings the fastest is the distracted driving, because it's like milliseconds of distraction is devastation. We cannot do two things at once. So we also cannot be present for another human, fully connect with another human while we're also thinking about that fight we're going to have next week or that work project or checking out the menu or whatever. We can't do it. So avoid distraction. R is reflection. Reflection, and this is the one communication people love the most, is reflective listening. When I say reflective listening, you know what it is because you've been in this world. But usually when I say reflective listening, people think what I mean is to reflect on what the person is saying. And that's actually great. I love that. Except if you're going to reflect on what the person is saying, make sure you reflect on what it means to them, not on what it means to you. Usually when we're reflecting on what someone's saying, we're thinking, what does this mean to me? How do I feel about this? It's the other question. They're telling you something. My brain should be going, they're telling me this for a reason. They're taking time and energy to tell me this. Even if you think, sometimes you ever have somebody telling you a story and you're like, why are they wasting my time with this stupid story? Catch yourself when that happens and ask, there's a reason. There has to be a reason. They're not deliberately wasting my time. Something about this story is important to them to tell me. Let's find out what it is. You can view yourself as a detective. Let's figure out why this is important for them to tell me. And as soon as you do that, it shifts your mindset real quick. So that's how you reflect on what somebody is saying. But reflective listening is an age-old communication technique where you paraphrase back to somebody something they've just said, but you do it in your words from their perspective. Your words from their perspective. Usually the way we respond to people is we instantly give them our opinion or our advice or our story in response to what somebody else says. It's an instinct. It's not like we do it on purpose or wrong. It's not like it's wrong or bad, but it's an instinct. What it does is it doesn't make the person feel like you heard them. It makes them feel like you were just waiting for them to stop speaking so you could say your own thing. And we've gotten so used to it, we almost don't even realize we're all doing it to each other all day. Like everyone's just shouting past each other now. And that's why we have a loneliness epidemic. No one feels heard. And so somebody finishes telling you something and you can just say, yeah, so it sounds to me like what you're saying is, right? It sounds like what you're saying is, or what I hear you saying is. And you just paraphrase back to them what they just said. Use your words, but in their perspective. And the key is you can't insert your own opinion, your agreement, your disagreement, nothing from yourself into that.
Simply, or your own story, which
your own story. Exactly. No, but that's okay. No, we're doing something different, right? What we're doing is an interview, and an interview is a performance, right? What you and I are doing is you and I are here present for the audience listening to this podcast in the future. So you and I are not having a quote real conversation. You and I are doing something for the audience, right? So anything we're doing is for them. But when you're having like a one-to-one real human, non-recorded, not for the future conversation with someone, you paraphrase back to them what they just said in your words from their perspective. And it's amazing. It's amazing. If you do it once. It's like you will get a hit like you've never felt before, because when you do it, you will watch a person's entire body language shift. Because if you can go, hey, so it sounds to me like what you're saying is, it sounds to me like, this project is really important to you. Even just that, somebody tells you all about this thing that they want to do. You're not interested at all. It's your spouse. It's their work. You don't care. They're going on and on and on about this thing. You think, why are they telling me this? They got to care about this, or they're going to spend 18 minutes rambling on about it. So if all you come back with is, it sounds like this project is really important to you, that alone, you will watch people's entire body change because they feel seen. They feel heard for the first time understood. Sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's one of these things that is simple, but it is not easy. It is simple. There's nothing to it. But it's very hard to do, to check the instinct to go, and here's what I think. Or, oh, let me tell you this crazy thing that happened at work today. And listen, I'm no saint. I do it wrong too, right? I'm not perfect. I do it wrong too. And my wife is a therapist. We both know better, and we both do it to each other. We're all human. But I try to do it as often as I can. So eye contact, avoid distraction, reflection, summarize. Ears, last one is summarize. It's just doing reflective listening at the end of a conversation. Summarizing is most useful when you're disagreeing with somebody. When you're about to disagree with them or argue or debate, to summarize in your words from their point of view what their case is, what their point is, the argument that they're making, to summarize it as best as you can before you disagree with them. Because what happens is when you do that, their guard goes down. They feel heard, which is what they were looking for. They feel understood. Now they're open, much more open to whatever you have to say, which is going to be disagreeing with them. They're going to be more open to it. Whereas if they finish talking and you go, no, and then you just go into your disagreement, their guard is all the way up. They're not listening now. Just because you weren't listening to them, so they're not listening to you. If you can summarize the gist and take a minute to do it, I'll say this to someone. I say, listen, I just want to make sure I've fully understood what you're saying. And philosophers call it steel manning. We've heard straw manning, which is you don't want to straw man someone, which is you don't want to attack a deliberately weak version of their argument, which is what we mostly do all the time. Steel manning is the opposite. Before I attack your argument, I'm going to make the best possible case I can make for your side before I start attacking, because I want to make sure that I'm ethically, philosophers call it steel manning, I'm attacking the strongest case that you have, not the weakest. Same idea in a conversation. I want to make sure that I am disagreeing with the truest, most honest version of what you said. And then people feel heard.
I think you just gave me the formula for winning every argument with my husband. He will not appreciate that, Brian, but I am very grateful. Now, ears, I think this is a fantastic way to demonstrate that we're listening, particularly for people like you and I who do a lot of talking.
We do. We do a lot of talking. Well, that's the catch-22 of being invited as a guest to talk about listening. I spend the entire interview talking about listening. It's brutal.
I love
get
it.
invited.
I love it. All right. We're running on time, but I really want to ask you a couple more questions if you're game.
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. Excellent. You are married. You've been married now like 7-ish years to your wife, Lindsay, and you both have a 2.5-year-old son named Milo.
Yes,
Tell
we
me,
do.
I would love to hear, as a fellow parent, what has been the most surprising experience of parenthood for you?
Oh boy, what a great question. The most surprising experience of parenthood. I'm going to answer this very honestly, because that's the only way I know how to answer. I never, and my wife knows this, so this isn't some shock to her. I never wanted to have kids. I wasn't against having kids. I was open to it, but left to my own devices, I probably just would have stayed working 80 hours a week and building my business. And I was very happy working 80 hours a week because I work for myself and I love my work. The most surprising thing is how much I've just loved every stage of it. And I mean, I've loved every stage of it. And people would tell me, oh, watch out, that first, the first 2 months are brutal. And they were, and they were amazing. I loved it. And they're like, watch out, the terrible twos. The twos are awesome. And yeah, he's got a personality and he gets angry about stuff. And I get frustrated with it. It's not like I don't get frustrated with it, but at the same time, I love it because I'm like, well, I am frustrated right now because I have a tiny bottle of rage yelling at me nonsensically. There's nothing rational. My brain is so rational. And I'm like, there's nothing rational about what's happening right now. He's having a tantrum because I took the thing he handed me. I didn't want this anyway. Take it back.
Take it back.
Like, what made you think I wanted this? It's your garbage. But in that moment, I love it because I'm like, yeah, he's finding out what he likes and what he cares about and what's interesting. I love the terrible twos are not terrible to me. He's a personality and he has opinions and ideas of his own. His language is developing rapidly right now. He's 2.5. And the other day he said, Dada, put on the record player. I was like, what? I didn't know you knew any of those words, let alone how to string them into one sentence. Plus, the request was fantastic. Yes, I will put on the record player. How about some Van Halen, little dude? So the most surprising thing is how much I've actually loved every stage of it where I was warned about all these terrible phases, which now makes me think, oh, don't do that to other expecting parents. Like so many parents are like, especially dads. There were so many dads that, because we just started a family later in life. Most of our friends had 3 kids already and they had teenage, some of them have 10, 12-year-olds already. Every dad that I knew that I would ask, he's like, it's going to ruin your life. I heard that over and over again.
Great.
And I was just like, well, it changed my life. Definitely. If you mean ruined by I can't keep doing things the way I used to do them, then sure. And there have been times I've struggled with that, right? I can't be the entrepreneur on call at all times for my clients that I used to be because I can't. I got to clock out. I have a family. But I've been very surprised by how much I just love it. So, yeah.
I love the unexpected portion of that. And, we have a lot in common. I was the generation, that was going to break the mold and go on and do graduate school and conquer a career and all of that. So getting married seemed like something I wanted to do and I was very open to, but having kids, I was ambivalent.
Yeah.
So
that's the right word.
I will say, everyone asks me, what has been the happiest times of your life? And I said, raising my son, but I would say the first 6 months, I got to stay home. I was home for 6 months and it was magical because I had no idea how much I was going to enjoy it. I really was like, had trepidation about, are we going to get along? Like, how is this going to go? Is he going to like me? Am I going to like him? And it was such an amazing switch inside of me. I was like, they had told me this, we would have been more proactive about this sooner. But
Yeah.
I'm glad that that's your experience. It resonates with me when you talk about that. So I'm happy
Yeah.
for you.
Thank
Tell me about Beyond the Red Dot and the work that you're doing and how you're helping people, because you do really
Yeah.
have a range of clients. I was really pleasantly just surprised to just hear from individuals and entrepreneurs to people who are venturing down the thought leadership and speaking arena, to those folks with a real desire to do a TEDx, to organizations that need help on messaging
Yeah.
and cutting through the clutter. Tell me a little bit about how you even decided that was the next step in the journey for you.
Yeah. So the next step of the journey for me, well, it's interesting because it wasn't so much the next step as it was a parallel move. It was so to this day, my 9 to 5 job is I am a speaker and consultant on human connection. That's my 9 to 5. And if I had to drop everything but one thing, I would drop everything but that. So I would go back to just speaking and consulting on human connection. So I support my family doing my keynoting and working with organizations, building connected cultures, everything we've been talking about. But what happened was because my TEDx talk went so viral and early in the TED process. These days, 3.5 million views is actually not such a big deal. It's still nice, but it's not such a big deal anymore. Back when it happened, it was impossible. It was like at the top of the top, and it was wild. So I started getting aspiring TEDx speakers, people who had been invited to speak at a TEDx conference, but had 3 months to work on their speech, reaching out to me and saying, literally, I've seen your talk. I want to do a talk as good as yours. Can you help me write mine? And I wasn't a speaker coach. I was a former magician who was now speaking for a living. I had never coached anyone. I had no methodology. I had help writing my talk. You know what I mean? I was like, I had Zoe. Like, I didn't know how to write my own talk. But entrepreneurs, you know that what we do. I don't know what the question is, but I know the answer is yes. So people say, "Can you help me?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure. I'll try anything once."
We'll reverse engineer this one way or
Yeah,
another.
we'll figure it out. What I loved about the prospect, the very first person I ever worked with, their topic was so important. And it was about diversity and inclusion in the workplace and bad bosses and bad company cultures and things like that. And it was a really important topic. And I was like, yeah, I do want to work on this because that's important to me too. And so I helped them write their TEDx talk. They went and gave it, and it went viral.
Mm.
Like it popped off. It got 300,000 views or whatever it did, and it was amazing. And she leveraged that to quit her 9 to 5, build her own consultancy, which now is a boutique consultancy with like 30 employees serving like all of New England. She's like the DEI consultant and it's boutique, but it's getting bigger.
I was
Like it's
gonna
a
say,
big
is
thing.
30 employees still boutique?
No, no. And so her work has become really, and so she was able, and so I saw her like leverage the work that we did to go do a new thing, just like I had leveraged mine to go do. And then she gave my name to somebody else, and they worked with me, and I helped them, and then they gave my name to somebody. So I started this little like just coaching on the side, 1 or 2 talks a year, right? It takes a lot of work to coach somebody on a TED talk. It's just a huge commitment. So 1 or 2 talks a year. And then when COVID hit and my day job was wiped out, my life's work didn't matter. Magic, speaking, didn't matter. Live events gone overnight. 18 months I was booked up almost a year and a half in advance. 18 months of contracts were canceled
Mm.
overnight. We had a baby on the way that we hadn't told anybody about yet. Milo was just an idea basically at the time, but he existed. And so I had to figure out, what can I do? And I did start doing virtual workshops in human connection, how to connect virtually and things like that. I started doing that. But a few months in, once I kind of settled, how do I pivot my main thing? I was like, well, I've always done that coaching thing for TED speakers on Zoom. That was always on Zoom. I know how to do that. Maybe I'll just start talking about that more. And so I just turned on my marketing brain. I had built a career in magic. I had built a career as a speaker. I was like, I know how to market now. So I just went, what if I just started talking about this? And came up with an interesting title for it. And I called it Conquer the Red Dot. I go, yeah, Ted's got the red dot on the stage. That's clever, whatever. Oh man, that exploded. It exploded so fast. It completely overwhelmed me with the demand for people that wanted to have me help them do a TED Talk, even though there were no live events. There weren't TED events in that first
Amazing.
year, but they wanted to hire me to get ready for when they came back. They wanted to be ahead of the game. Entrepreneurs, smart business owners wanted to be ready. And I so enjoyed everyone I worked with. As you noted, I don't work with one particular kind of person. I was working with executives, I was working with leaders, I was working with, advocates, people with really traumatic experiences. In fact, it's a lot of my clients are people who have past traumatic experiences. It's kind of just become an accidental niche of mine that I seem to be able to take those dark stories and turn them into talks that are not dark, that are serious, but are uplifting at the same time. And so, yeah, that business of coaching people to give a TED talk exploded. And then I realized at some point that the people I was coaching were transforming their businesses using the clarity stuff I had taught them before they ever stepped on the red dot.
Mm.
So they hadn't even given their TED talk yet, but their business was going up. Leads were coming in. They were booking more clients. They were doing better work using the stuff I was teaching them in TED and putting it over here in business. And my light bulb went off. I was like, oh, I should be selling that. I can go straight to a business. You don't need to be giving a TED talk. Why can't I use this over here? And that's where my company now, Clarity Up Consulting, was born as the umbrella for basically the three different things I do. I do the TED coaching, I do messaging work for companies and organizations, and I do human connection. And so I can sum up my whole company by I help experts and leaders talk less, say more, and connect with anyone.
I love
That
it.
covers all
I
three things I do.
love it. Okay. Biggest misconception about landing a TED Talk.
Biggest misconception about landing a TED Talk. TEDx organizers do not book speakers. They are the only conference organizers that do not book speakers. They book ideas. TEDx organizers are looking for an idea to put on their stage. The speaker is almost incidental. You happen to be the vessel for it or the vehicle for it. Every other type of conference, if you're trying to get into professional speaking or speak whatever, you're mostly pitching you as a speaker. And by the way, here's what I talk about. Here's how I can help your audience, et cetera, et cetera. TED books ideas. And so the number one mistake, there's a few big mistakes, but the number one mistake I see people who have struggled to land a TEDx talk is that on their applications, they're really selling themselves. They're amping up all their experience speaking, how engaging they are, how great their stories are. That's not what organizers are looking for. They're looking for either there's one of two things. There's only two ways to get a TED Talk. One, to have a completely new idea that's never been seen or heard before in human history. That's not for us mere mortals. That is for like engineers, academics, primary researchers, scientists, people who've literally discovered a new type of star, like whatever. The other way to get into a TEDx talk that the rest of us do, including me, is you have to have a completely unique perspective, a novel perspective on an existing idea. You need to show an existing idea to somebody, to the audience, in a way that they've never considered it. Like I was talking about listen to understand, not just to respond or to reply. That is like old cliched advice at this point. It was in how to make friends and influence people. It's Carnegie. It's in all this stuff. But because I was able to show it to the audience through the lens of what I learned as a magician, they were able to see this old idea in a novel way. And so it landed for the first time. It got them thinking about it for the first time. That is what a TEDx organizer is looking for. So biggest misconception, they don't book speakers. By and large, they book ideas. Put the idea first. The idea is what you got to sell.
Really, really good advice. Okay, I'm going to give you the last word here. Advice to all of our aspiring thought leaders and speakers, because one thing that Brian has taught me in our few conversations is you do not need to be a TEDx speaker to be a thought leader. And thought leaders get booked all the time for speaking gigs. So things you've learned that you would say to aspiring thought leaders out there.
I'm going to give the world's dumbest piece of advice. And if you don't listen to it, you are fooling yourself. So here you go. Here's the dumbest piece of advice. The only thing that a thought leader must do, there's lots of things that you could do. The only thing you must do is have thoughts. And too many people who are trying to be quote unquote thought leaders don't have any thoughts of their own. All they're doing are regurgitating other people's thoughts. They're reading books and they're putting quotes from other people's books, from other people's TED Talks. They're sharing this stuff. All that's great. Curation is great. Show people cool stuff. But you will never be a thought leader. You will never be paid like a thought leader. You'll never get paid or earn respect for the ideas in your head if you do not produce your own thoughts and share your own thoughts. You have to have your own thoughts, by which I mean you need to make predictions, make assertions, and make judgments. Those three things, and publish them. And people go, well, what if my prediction's wrong? Great. If your prediction's wrong, do another post 2 months later when you realize your prediction was wrong about why you got your prediction wrong, what you've learned from it, and make a new prediction based on your new information. People are wrong all the time. It's fine. Own it. Make assertions. Say things not as a guess. Say things confidently. Make assertions. Here's what I think about this. I spent years at organizations telling them, if you do not double down on human connection, you are going to lose. I could have been wrong about that. But if I had said, I think, if you don't do this, or it's probably a good idea to consider this, no one would take you seriously. And people like that never change the world. You don't have to be right all the time. But if you are actually the expert you say you are, or you claim to be, you will be right a lot more often than you are wrong. If it turns out you're wrong most of the time, you're not the expert you think you are. Go back and get better at what you do. Right? That's right. That's the harsh advice here. Right? It turns out you're mostly wrong. You shouldn't be getting paid to be an expert. Go back and get better at what you do, and then come back. But thought leaders make predictions, make assertions, and you make judgments. Do not be afraid to see something in the world, to see an article or a video or a piece of advice someone has given, and just openly and publicly disagree with it. Kindly, not attacking, but I have no qualms when I see somebody post something on LinkedIn that I don't agree with. I have no issue with going into the comments and saying, first, I understand where you're coming from as far as I can tell, right? Perspective taking. As far as I can tell, here's what you mean by that. And I totally get that instinct or whatever. Here is what I have seen in my experience, or here's what I believe in my world, or have you considered this, or what would you say about that? And that is making a judgment, saying, actually, I disagree. And I have no issue doing that. And great thought leaders have never had issue making judgments. So make predictions, make assertions, make judgments. If you do that, you are on the road to being a thought leader.
This has been pure bliss for me, and I can't wait to meet a conversation. I hope you come back again soon.
I am so excited to. Can I offer one thing to your audience before we bounce?
Please do.
If you want to get started on that road to thought leadership, I have a free video course, 5 ways to become a thought leader in 2023. If you're listening to this in 2025, just pretend I just said 2025. The advice will be exactly the same. You can go to earnrespectgetpaid.com, earnrespectgetpaid.com, and that will take you right to that free video course.
And I will be sure to include in the show notes links to Brian's website, his book on Amazon, the free video course that he talked to you about, and his social media. So there are multiple ways to connect with him. Definitely, if you're thinking about getting into the speaking arena and think you need some help, reach out to Brian. He does do a free consult, and it's worth just connecting with him and gauging his thoughts on it. So again, Brian, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you.
Michelle, thanks so much for having me. This is great. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please comment, like, and subscribe to this channel to continue to receive content that inspires. Let us know what resonates and what you'd like to hear more about. You are here for a purpose. It's time for you to step into that purpose, become the most authentic version of you, and start living, truly living your extraordinary life. It's never too late. And in fact, we're just getting started.